Welcome back to What Arty Noobs with General Disturbance. This is the Valiant. It's the Tier 5 British premium medium tank. It's located on the north spawn of Fisherman's Bay, and this one is under the command of ProvoBob. Yes, he rather likes this terrible tank. It really is quite awful. David Fletcher calls it the worst British tank ever. And you can understand that, even if you've actually seen the thing for yourself, and I have. Bovington, yeah, the only example is remaining there. Now, it's supposed to be a heavily armoured tank designed for use in the Far East against the Japanese, but it was just so goddamn awful that eventually they gave up after it went for its first trip in the trials, and the driver said he couldn't drive it. It was going to injure him if he tried. So after a lot of sweat and pain, they effectively decided that this tank was absolutely no good whatsoever and abandoned it. In fact, they waited until the Centurion came along, and that was the design they went with instead. It's got a 75mm gun, which is capable of 110 alpha, and it'll penetrate 91mm with the standard ammo, but with the premium rounds it'll go through 144. Now, as this is Fisherman's Bay, some enemy tanks have gone up to the centre straight away, and ProvoBob's trying to manoeuvre into a position where you can get shots on those guys. Couldn't see them through those fences. You can shoot through fences, by the way. They do disappear. Some people actually have to pull back in order to look at a target before they shoot it. But most of the time you don't need to pull back. You can just shoot straight through a destructible object. You won't lose that much penetration in the process anyway. Now, as this is the Southeast Asia server, or rather the Australian New Zealand server I should say, there's lots of bots in this game, distinguishable by the fact that they've got a colon in front of and behind the name. And Bob likes playing this game at tier 5 mainly because he gets a lot of chance to blast away at the enemy and just generally ping them. Or is it pling them? I don't know. You're plinking targets, yes. That's what the Americans do, isn't they? They buy a gun so they can go out and plink targets, get practice. Well, that's what Bob does. He loves playing with these tier 5 tanks, the Excelsior and the Valiant. Oh, that was a waste of a APCR there. Yeah, I don't think you're going to knock those down. That's the solid structure. He's actually firing because he thinks the enemy tank is there, but there's actually an enemy tank just around the corner. Suddenly see him through the arches. Yeah, it's KV1. And oh no, this is an easy target. He could destroy that one with standard ammo because that's a Type 95, very low armor, and that bot just went straight past. But that tank is not a bot, and he just set light to him and he burned him up, so he got to the arsonist. Now that Type 95 is totally ignoring him, even though he got 2 shots into the guy. And I think, yeah, he's going to go around the corner and finish him off, but you don't need to use premium ammo, Bob. Standard ammo is good enough on this one. They are just literally so thin. Japanese tanks weren't made with the best quality steel. That was reserved for the Japanese Navy because there was a lot of fighting between the Navy and the Army. In fact, they hated each other more than they hated the enemy, the Japanese. The Japanese Navy and Army, famous fights between them. But of course, Japan being an island race, they decided that their navy was much more important than their army. And as a consequence, the navy got the first dibs on any good steel. And that's why you don't see many Japanese tanks in the game. Well, the tanks that are in the game are fake, or mostly fake, based on designs that were never put into practice. In fact, actually, the Americans and the Allies decided that they could quite easily put the now not redundant, but how will we put it? The M3 Lee was outgraded and out-engineered by German tanks in the European theatre. But the M3 was actually very good out in the Middle East the Far East, simply because Japanese tanks were still in the 1930s in their design. And they were totally incapable of taking out things like the M3, even though it had fairly thin armour, riveted construction on some of them, although they did actually move over to cast construction. In fact, the Valiant is a cast construction tank. And so, yes, they could easily knock out the Japanese tanks with an M3. And when they ever came up against the M4, yeah, the Japanese were totally upgraded and they just couldn't survive. Well, Bob's team is actually one down on the enemy at the moment, which is pretty awful. They haven't really made much progress. It's just got as far as the middle line and that's it. But then the enemy hasn't been pushing into our territory either, other than that Type 95 and the KV-1. And of course Bob's accounted for 2 of the kills, and the T-28 on our team has also got 2, and he's a real player. In fact, you can see there's a platoon of T-28s in the game, and they're over on the far side of the battlefield on the west flank. Nobody around here. Yeah, that Cruiser 4, he's just sitting there. Unfortunately, we lost sight of him now, behind the bushes. There's an M8A1 up there as well. He's blasting away his premium ammo on something he can't see. The Valiant was actually really designed as an assault tank, because obviously they expected the Japanese were going to be firing at it from the front and blasting away. Oh, the M8A1 got well into sight there. In fact, it looks like he's just on the houses right at the corner, and it looks like he's moving south like ProvoBob's moving south at the moment, so they might meet each other just around the corner. Oh, well, somebody's in sight. That's a Type 95. Now, you wouldn't need the premium ammo on the M8A1 either, because the M8 Scott, as it's known, is actually very thin armour as well, so standard ammo would generate lots of profits, but unfortunately ProvoBob just loves plinking away with the gold ammunition. Oh, there's the Type 95, and he can't see us. Firing in this direction, and he's getting it right, but that's a bot, and it's a dead bot now. So now they're one up on the enemy, and ProvoBob actually does have 20% of the enemy hit pool, which means he might actually end up with the high caliber. He's ended up with plenty of high caliber before, as you can see from the markings on the sides of this vehicle. In fact, plenty of ace tankers in this one as well. It's not a very fast tank, actually, this one. 19 kilometers an hour top speed. In fact, it was so dreadfully slow when they did it in the tests. If it'd gone much faster, though, it probably would have broken the driver's limbs a lot quicker. And that M18 he saw earlier has been taken out. You can certainly see that it's heavily armoured if you actually see the real Valiant, because it's thick metal right at the front of the vehicle, incredibly thick metal, 114 millimeters of armour at the front. So yeah, and it's cast metal as well, so it was all put together very, very well, but it's just too heavy, and the engines and the mechanics were just not good enough. Now, his sixth sense went off when he went round the corner, which means somebody saw him. I think it might be the tanks that saw him were right up at the centre, and the reason he's pulled back is there's a Panzer IV up there, the Panther conversion with the Panzer IV turret, which is very deadly. It's got a fast fire rate with that Panzer IV turret, and of course it's got the hit points of a Panther prototype, which means obviously it can do a lot of damage. Now that cruise is coming towards him. One shot's enough. And oh, this is what we didn't want to see, but he's low on hit points and Bob just puts him out of his misery. A coup de grace. We did take some damage from the RAM though, 336 hit points. Looks like that Fear was after the RAM, but he actually did fire 2 rounds in as well. So Bob's lost 2/3 of his hit points so far, and there's still 3 enemies out there. All of them are on the other side of the battlefield, or so we think. We know 2 of them are, but the Panzer IV Ausrung H, which could have the 350mm gun, might be elsewhere. He might be protecting this side. You see those 3 marks of excellence on Bob's barrel. Yes, he certainly played this tank a lot. I think some people actually look at other people's stats and they get shock and horror on their faces when they realise which tank somebody has overplayed a great deal. Because actually looking at somebody's stats and looking at which tank they play the most gives you a good idea of what their specialisation is. In Bob's case, that will probably be the Valiant and the Excelsior. And then they'd know that they were a tier 5 terror, either that or a seal clubber, going around the battlefield, killing all the noobs. Now he's decided he's going to go into the cap, or is he? He could force the enemy to come to him, but at this distance on this cap, actually wouldn't be a good idea. He's been spotted again. Ah, that's who spotted him. And it is the Panzer IV, and he does have the dirt gun, the 105mm, and he's lobbing HE rounds in our direction, or rather heat rounds actually in our direction, because obviously he knows full well that he'll have difficulty getting through the armour of the Valiant. Trouble is, Bob's actually presenting his side to the enemy, and that's only got 75mm of armour. And that's much easier for that 105mm to penetrate. Thankfully, he's now turned his front to the enemy, which makes him a little more difficult to kill. Plus, he's hiding behind the camp. Another good reason for getting rid of the camp. Every time you play a battle, get rid of it quickly so that the enemy can't use it as a defense. There he is. Oh, bounced another round. And it was a heat round again. But he's out the game now. And that's the top gun. There's only one enemy left. It's the Panzer III Ausrung J. And at best he's got the, I think it's the 5cm gun. But it doesn't have enough penetration to penetrate a Valiant frontally. I think he can only get through the sides and the rear. And Bob takes him out with one nice leading shot. And here's the end of battle results, and that's another ace tanker for ProvoBob to add to his total in the Valiant. He got an arsonist because setting light on one of the enemy and watching them burn to death. That was the KV-1. He got a shellproof for blocking more damage than hit points for his own vehicle, a duelist for taking down 2 tanks who damaged him, a fire for effect for doing more damage than hit points for his own vehicle, and a bruiser medal for getting at least 5 critical hits. In this one he got 20, no he didn't, got 6, so I'm 23 penetrating shots there I'm looking at. He actually got 6 critical hits on the enemy. He actually did get enough for a top gun, but he didn't get the high caliber. We'll have to find out why in a second. His win rate from that game was 8,967, which is Super Unicum standard. So let's have a look at team score and we'll see why he didn't get it. Well, there you go. It's the other tank, the other premium tank in the game, the Seal Clubber tank, the Panzer IV. He got 2,757 hit points of damage, beating Bob's 2,357. So he picked up a high caliber and a top gun, like Bob, but he got the top gun. But yes, he didn't survive the battle because he made a very bad decision to ram Bob, and then Bob could just take him out with 1 round from his 75mm afterwards. So, yeah, no high caliber, but he did get 20% of the enemy hit pool, but so did the enemy. When it came to kills, though, he beat the Panzerfunktier because he got 7 kills. The enemy Pumptier only got 6. And when it came to base XP, yeah, Bob's got the high one on that one. 1,421 to him. 972 to the Pumptier. And then the next high score after that was one of the T-28 platoon with 551. Bob fired 34 rounds in that game, got 23 direct hits on the enemy, 23 penetrations. That comes from using the APCR. I do wish that he would use the standard rounds because I think he'll find that most of those standard rounds will penetrate most of the tanks he was firing at. The only tank really that he came across that he needed to fire the APCR at was the KV-1 because it does have very good armour at the front of the vehicle, but it's fairly weak on the sides, and he was firing into the sides on that one. But he probably could have penetrated it with standard ammo. The Pumptier actually does have fairly thin armour, although it's well angled at the front. But yes, I'm pretty sure he would have just easily gone through the turret, even with the Schiessen that the turret has, the side shielding. He did 2,357 hit points of damage, of which 531 were at more than 300 meters. Those were some of the shots he was firing at the Panzerfunktier Ausführung H. This wasn't Panzerfunktier, it was Panzervier Ausführung H, the Panzer IV, up long distance away amongst those trees. 9 hits received from the enemy, 2 of which penetrated, 7 non-penetrations. Those were the 105mm rounds, and they were heat rounds as well, but they weren't enough to get through his armour. I think that might be because they were hitting the strong points, not the weak points, and that's why they just weren't getting through. 1,250 hit points of damage blocked by armour. 7 enemy vehicles were damaged, 7 were killed, and 208 hit points of damage assistance, and he got 85 cap points while he was sitting in the cab. 46,239 credits from the game, 21,732 from holiday ops, 67,971 altogether, but all that premium ammo does have an effect, and after repair and ammunition resupply, he actually ended up with a loss of 29,542 credits. If he'd actually used standard ammo, I think he would have actually had a massive profit out of that game. Huge, I mean tens of thousands of profit, but no, he persists in using APCR. 60 bonds from the battle, and 2,131 XP times 2 for the first victory, 853 for this being a premium vehicle, which Wargaming gave to us actually. I think it was more, you know, here's something that we've just drummed up out of basically a tank that's in Bovingdon. Go ahead and see what you can do with it. I don't think they realised that Bob would do what he's doing with it. 5,116 experience points altogether. So another ace tanker from Bob. Yeah, I seem to have a lot of these games where he's actually plinking away at bots, and those bots keep fighting back as well. I just wish that he would use standard ammo on them to get rid of them, because it would just be so funny coming out of a battle against bots with a massive credit total instead of a massive credit loss. So there you go, Bob. I hope you enjoyed that replay. If you did, please give this video a like. Do subscribe to our channel. Leave a little comment down below because it feeds the algorithm. And thank you for watching.